This is Lava Journal podcast. We discuss video marketing news. Our guest today is Scott Thompson. Scott is a video producer specialized in B2B videos. I decided to chat with Scott because of his extensive experience in producing from both sides, as a producer in a hired team and as a client who hires a production team. Scott's clients have included Seagate, Boston Dynamics, and Teledyne. In short, we're discussing B2B videos. Hello, Scott. Thank you very much for joining the podcast. I know you as a professional in B2B video production, and I want to learn more about you and your background. Can you please share your journey as a B2B video producer?
I actually started my career in higher education, working at a small college. This was back before we had high definition cameras and LED lights and all the tools that we have now that make filmmaking so much more accessible. Back when I was starting my career, you could not edit. The digital editing was in its infancy. So this was back in the 90s. So I started my career as a teacher, but I started taking courses in video production because it was a hobby of mine. And then as the technology got better and it was possible to edit on your computer at your house, I knew I needed to change my career. So I eventually landed at a major technology company in my hometown. And that's when I got introduced to B2B marketing. And this company was called FLIR. Now it's called Teledyne FLIR. And it's a $1 billion global company that sells all sorts of technology. It's best known for thermal imaging cameras, which not everybody knows about, but in the military and in the industry, it's a technology people are aware of. So I was thrust into a position where I was a writer, I was a producer, I was a project manager, and I would support different product lines inside the company. So in my case, the products I was supporting or helping market were boating electronics, security cameras, traffic cameras, and also some hunting scopes. So it was quite a wide range of audiences. Even though the technology was similar, the applications were very different. And so my work included, on the copy side, brochures and web copy and e-commerce. And then on the video side, we would make videos for trade shows, social media, and also corporate events. So that was kind of my quick introduction to B2B video production.
I learned that you worked as a marketing project manager responsible not only for video, but also for many other marketing activities. So why did you decide to focus on B2B video rather than marketing as a whole? What drew you specifically to B2B video?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier in my career, when I started seeing the technology become more accessible, I've been a photographer. There's something about video production that it's hard work, and people might romanticize, or they might have fantasy about what it's like to be on a film set, that it's really something special, but it's really it's a day of work. But for me, it's just the excitement to be able to see it all edited together. Say you walk into a trade show and you see the video that you and your team made, and it's showing on the big screen and people are watching, they're learning. It's a way to quickly communicate ideas. Clearly, a brochure or a website, you have to invest more time, but a video's job is to attract interest in a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And I find that process of taking a big story and cutting it down to a really condensed, solid minute or two of information, I just find that challenge to be something really interesting. And my approach to video is that its job is to inform, but also provoke emotion.
Your client Teledyne has an extensive range of products. How many videos did you make for them?
Well, the videos I can't count. There were some videos that we would call electric signage or signs, where they were closer to a PowerPoint, but that you would have a little motion in it. And so if someone walked up to a trade show, there'd be a little frame and it might show the titles of different cameras or different products with bullet points and so forth.
I saw simple videos like PowerPoint videos with footage and titles. I also saw complex videos with soldiers or policemen and so on. So how did you plan this video content strategy?
Well, the way Teledyne worked is, at the time, I don't work there anymore, is each product division would have a marketing director. So he or she would decide, hey, I have a trade show coming up. I have an idea for, or these are the products that we're going to be launching at that trade show. So we need to get them into a video. So, for example, one comes to mind. It was a thermal camera used for fishing or for boating. And so we just needed a video of someone allegedly sort of going out, or actors looking like they're fishing, but on a boat, using the camera. And then we would capture footage from the camera, and then, so the person would go put it to his eye, and then we would show what he's seeing, that sort of thing. And so in that case, I flew down to San Diego. I hired a local video crew. I had not worked with them before, but they came recommended. And so we met. I had a shot list. Didn't really have a script, but kind of have a loose idea of two gentlemen going out fishing in the morning when it's dark, and then it slowly becomes daytime. So we actually shot that in reverse. So we started it in the afternoon and we went into the evening. And so we flipped it so it seemed like they were starting in the morning, and then, going out early when it's dark on the water, and then eventually the sun comes up and they're fishing. So that was the idea. But in that case, we just kind of went scene by scene, and there was a crew of about 5 people, and we all shook hands and said hello and let's get to work. So we in about 8 to 10 hours, we got all the footage we needed, and then then they got all the footage back home, and then I would work with an editor back at the office in Portland, and we put it together. So that was kind of it was a lot. I would say it was very similar to documentary filmmaking, because small crews, kind of a loose script. We didn't usually have a storyboard beforehand, and we were just kind of figuring it out.
What did you prefer when working on the client side? Hiring a production studio or organizing the shooting process independently by yourself?
I think I've just had good experience in both ways. We had a really good rapport, and I could, say, okay, here's the shot list that you need to cover, and he would just go do his work. And so I was mostly working with the actors. But in those shoots, I was also producer and director. You may understand that. So sometimes I'm concentrating on time, schedule, food. Do I need to get the makeup artist back to shore sooner because she has another appointment? All those sorts of things that are just about the organization of the day. Then the director, that's more like talking to the performers and making sure that their performance is what we need it to be. But then there was a case in Canada, in British Columbia, where I had to hire a DP and gaffer from Vancouver, and we flew way up close to Alaska almost, but in Canada. And they were great. We shot for 2 days, and they were highly professional. In fact, one of them, the gaffer, had been a second unit for Deadpool 2.
So if an external team was involved, how did you choose the production studio as a client? What criteria did you consider when selecting the team?
I'd say some of it was networking. For example, the crew in San Diego, I may mention that when I went down to film the fisherman commercial. I had a colleague who had worked in news television in San Diego. So I said, do you know any operators in San Diego? So I would look for video production teams that had maybe had some news background or some documentary background. There's a crew in Detroit area that I used. They had experience shooting for ESPN, for NBA TV, for news. And so when I know someone has a news background, I know that they are very accustomed to not knowing what's going to happen next. And sometimes you're looking at a reel and you get on the phone and you say, okay, well, I need help, and it sounds like it's going to work. And then you get there, and that's when you find out if it's a good fit. And again, in my case, I've just been able to have a good fit. So the reward is in the final product. And also, I think for me, the experience of working with a crew, those are the things that really motivate me. And helping, another motivation for me, you didn't really ask this question, but especially when we're interviewing people and helping draw a story out, they would never know how to do it themselves.
Okay, you use networking to choose the right person for your team, but do you use any site ratings or online services for this?
I think these days, with so much equipment that's available, that I think people can enter the industry more easily, I think you have to do a little more homework to make sure that if you're hiring someone who has a lot of professional background. In my local area, in my state of Oregon, there's an organization where lots of people post their names. And so there are associations where if someone's in that list, I know other people I can call and say, hey, have you worked with this DP? Have you worked with this gaffer? And networking is a lot easier locally than it is, farther away. So if I have to hire a local crew, I have lots of people I can call and say, hey, who shot that commercial for you?
As I understand, you and your team made dozens of videos for this brand, Teledyne. What software did you use to coordinate such a large volume of video content?
Well, we had a project management software that is less known. And by the way, when I worked that it was FLIR. So the reason I'm not working for them anymore is because FLIR was acquired by Teledyne and the name changed and they didn't need as many. So the internal teams, they didn't need as, so our project management tool had to do everything from brochures to events to emails. It was mostly just a list of things that had to be made. Like when I went to San Diego, I just had an Excel spreadsheet of shots they wanted.
When we shoot simple videos, we employ a mobile production team. Similar to your situation, sometimes we proceed without a storyboard and release scenes spontaneously. We coordinate through actions and communication via chat apps like WhatsApp or Telegram, and occasionally use tools such Google Docs and Google Sheets. But when we create complex projects like YouTube channels, we rely heavily on scripts and approval processes for shooting scenes and scripts with clients, the team, YouTube specialists. We use Trello or Bittrex as our content management system. This system ensures correct and efficient management because in such projects, with numerous stuff involved, it's easy to overlook details like creating thumbnails for YouTube or something else. By the way, I'd like to share my experience with the content management system we used 5 years ago. They implemented some great features that made a significant impact. Inside this program, right, you can download the video and, for example, as a client, you can annotate on the video and leave comments. For instance, you can say, clean up this area of the video, or I don't like the color correction in this frame or this part of the scene, or change Thomson on this character, and so on and so on. It was very helpful for communicating with clients, but the price was high. Every 2 months, they raised the price, which drove up costs. We stopped using it because it had cool features, but the price awful. And we developed our own online event system. For example, when we onboard a new client and start a new project, we create an online table for them. Client can access his own link where they can view the entire process in a visually organized chart. This way, they receive comprehensive information about the project and its steps, and it helps us a lot because the client doesn't ask a lot of questions and he sees everything on this chart.
When I first started at FLIR back in 2013, they were still using emails. And it was a mess because people like, do you remember getting that email from so-and-so? And they would have to go back and dig through. So when we finally got a project management system, it was much more centralized. And then it was a matter of just the client needed to log in and look at that particular project and see where we were in the process. And that made it much easier for them to give their confirmation, to give their approval, and for them to feel confident that things were moving and that things weren't getting lost in, emails or emails that got sent to spam and no one saw them. And you want to be able to have everything centralized. So if the Google Docs is a way, that's another approach, so everyone can get access to it and take a look. And then that's definitely what I encourage anyone who is working with clients. Put everything in one place so that everyone can go there and look and feel like things are moving ahead as they should. I worked at after FLIR, I worked at an agency, and their approach was to do a PowerPoint. Their storyboard was a PowerPoint, so every frame was a PowerPoint slide. And the thinking was the client could comment right there on the PowerPoint if they liked it, but it didn't actually show the finished video. So sometimes the team would finish the video and then the client would come back and say, well, I don't like this font or I don't like this motion. And the video team would feel like kind of a little surprised saying, but I thought the storyboard was approved. So I think sometimes you have to manage the expectations of the video team and the editors thinking, hey, we got approval for this. There still has to be a step where the client can come and say, look at the finished video and say, please change this, please change that. So you have to build that into your process, that there has to be some editing and changing of the final video. So if you're on the, like in my case, the producer trying to figure out how many hours to put towards editing, you can't put it all in just the first draft. You have to make sure there's hours for the second draft. Ideally, just 2 drafts. So that's just a little note to anyone out there who might be in the situation of having to create a bid for a job. So getting client approval every step of the way is wise, and you will avoid hard feelings or disappointments at the end, especially people who don't know video. It's kind of complicated. For me, it would be like talking to someone like a plumber or an electrician. I know nothing about plumbing or electrician, or very, very little. We have to educate the client why that's important and that it's actually to their benefit that we have a good crew and we don't try to do this with 2 people when we really need 4 people. And so if they just don't understand, it's like, why is this so expensive? Or why do we need 4 people? Why can't we do this? So there's a lot of, I think, trying to understand and working with people who don't know video is also a part of what makes a good production. So it's not just the cameras and the lights and the technical side. There's also the social part of it and helping your clients, particularly if they're intimidated a little bit by all this equipment, assuring them that they're part of the process.
Do you think that AI will kill the production teams, our industry, or how will it change it?
I think so. In the areas of stock footage, I would feel more threatened if I were a stock video producer than I would if AI is going to or if you're selling a car, can it render the Mercedes car exactly the way we want it to look? Maybe they can. So I just think there's going to be some areas where it's going to take so much effort to tell the AI to get it looking just right, the way we want it, when a video crew can just do that live. And you're not busy just like, oh, I have to give it more instructions. Oh, it's not quite right. I have to give it more instructions, where the video crew would have already shot that. We'd be done. And so I can see there's going to be this time frame where I just don't think AI is going to be specific enough. I can create a quick little storyboard for my client in a matter of minutes, and they can at least get the idea of what I'm thinking. The actual shot on the day may be different, but as far as just presenting a concept, it's very effective that way. And I've used Microsoft Copilot for that. I'll just say, I need a guy in a coffee shop. I need a person in an Uber. I need a person holding a baby, just to sort of present to the client, here's what I'm thinking in this script. And ultimately, when they shot the script, things changed a little bit. But they liked the approach, and it just made the script a little more, they could imagine it a little bit easier.
And cheaper. So for example, my managers, where they send not a commercial proposal, but a possible video concepts presentation, they use AI photos. So in just several seconds, you can get a very clear version of your idea, and it's comfortable, cheap, effective. So you mentioned that you use AI in DaVinci. Which tools do you also use?
I would say, like I mentioned before, I recently started using AI, and in this case, Microsoft Copilot, just for a script. I started working with a YouTube channel, and I just kind of had this general idea for they wanted some scenes that they could potentially shoot, and so I was trying to come up with a little bit of a funny hook, and that's why I was talking about I just need someone in a coffee shop, because what I was suggesting was you could do this character in this scene, and this scene, and this scene, and this scene, knowing that they would film it differently once on the day. but that gave me a quick kind of thumbnail, basically, of my thinking. So that's one way to use AI. I do use some AI in more for like organization, and then I'd say I wish I knew DaVinci better. I don't edit as much, and I'm trying not to spend so much time learning because I don't want to become a professional editor, but I at least want to, again, for my personal projects, I want to be able to understand the tools. And there's so much in color grading that is a whole science, and you could spend your whole career learning color grading. So I would say I'm a novice with color grading. I kind of fumble along, but I know that there's a lot of tools there too for me to learn more about. But even just the simple thing of syncing up audio and video with a waveform in a minute is phenomenal. But if the editing tools allow us to make content faster, then I say let's do it. And we'll worry if it eventually takes our jobs. But right now, it's a tool for us to do our job better. And so for that, I appreciate the people who are coming up with these tools.
Some questions about your clients, your recent clients. So who are they? Are they agencies, production studios, or direct clients?
The work that I've done independently has been with a direct client. In this case, it was a client who I had worked with when I was in-house. And then they called our company and said, hey, you did such a great job on our first video. But the first video was they had a prototype of their product. And so we only had footage of them like in their at their site, doing a practice. This was a fire, fire suppression, basically a water hose, a water cannon that put out fires in like scrap yards and places like that. Then they called back like 2 years later and said, hey, we'd like to do a case study because we have a customer has purchased our new product and they're installing it at their site. Can we do a video about that? So in that case, I just worked with them directly and I gave them a bid, and that's when I hired the team from Detroit and I flew out and we shot over 2 days. But right now, I'm a bit in a transition in terms of, what kind of niche I want to pursue with B2B. So I think with an agency, I would be more of hired for one project. They might hire me as a producer, or they might hire me as a script writer. I'm one person of the team, but I wouldn't actually be organizing the whole thing. So I think that's the one reality of working with an agency. You're the hired person, just like I went out and hired someone, but I was in control of the project.
What's your way of searching for new clients? We met with each other on LinkedIn. Did you use it for attracting new clients and searching for leads?
Right. LinkedIn, I would say most of my work, and again, of late, and really since the pandemic, most of my work has been currently copy, some video scripts, but also white papers and case studies. But yeah, they've come through contacts, former colleagues who have moved on to other companies. So LinkedIn has been a vital source. Posting to LinkedIn, I got on, as we say, got on people's radar, an expression to mean that they started noticing me, and though they knew me from working with me in the past, they may not have thought about me of late. They're still going through their approval process and background checks and all that, but it looks like I'll have a retainer with them. Yeah, and it takes a while though, because you have to you meet someone at a trade show and everything's great, and then everyone flies home, and then you send them a message and saying, how's it going? And so, that's the reality of marketing. You're trying to get in front of people, even though it may not be the right time for them, so that when it is the right time, they think of you.
I want to know about the trade show. Did you make any connections before the trade show? Did you do any research, or is it also a personal network from the past?
You have to stop and make a connection and say, hey, I really admire your video. Who made that? Was it an in-house team? Or I might just ask about, their technology, just to kind of educate myself. And then I would immediately, instead of giving them a business card, I would send a LinkedIn connection request. So it's not rude, but you're going to get more of a reaction than sending a message or sending an email that can be ignored. When I walk up to a person and say, hello, I'm Scott, and what's your name? And obviously they're going to talk to me. So I can't tell people that a trade show is you're guaranteed to make contacts, but I can also say you're guaranteed to talk to people if you want to, instead of hoping that if you send them a whole bunch of 100 LinkedIn requests back home versus flying there, I might have 10 legitimate connections where they'll remember me. What's better? So what's the best investment?
How clearly do clients who order B2B videos from you understand what they want to achieve in the end? Do you have to educate the client from a marketing perspective using your experience as a marketer and a project manager?
I think that's part of the discovery process. I've been in a situation where I thought that I knew what the client wanted, and what I delivered was more than they needed. And so their response was make it shorter, cut it back. But in that case, people, they know their product. They know how to build their machine or their, in case of B2B, it's going to be some kind of piece of technology. They know that technology. They know how to talk about it. But something in them says, oh, it'd be nice if this were in a video. But it kind of stops there. And so I liken it to someone who says, I need to build, say, a shed in my backyard. Well, how big is it? How wide is it? What are you going to put in it? And I think sometimes creatives can fall into that. Like we're so good at this. So I think sometimes clients, they have an idea of what they want. They want to be able to just to have something that's concise, something they can show a potential client, but they're not, the reason they're coming to a video production company is because they don't know how to tell a story. They don't know how to pull this together. So I think that it's probably safe to say that you're dealing with people who don't know enough about video to even tell you what they want. So that's part of the discovery process. Part of it is like, hey, do you think this would be best with someone talking to the camera and reading a script? We could do an explainer video, whether you're going to hear the voice but not see the person, and you're going to see animation. So one way you can help the client is show them different examples. Or you can say, hey, have you seen a video that is like what you want to make? Let's start there. And then you can let them be the one who curates the different videos and say, yeah, my competitor made something like this, and I don't want to copy it, but I want something similar. And then you have an idea. They're finding their voice, they're finding their concept. But if you start from scratch, like with no idea, I think some clients will have trouble. Like, you tell me, what can we do? And I think sometimes it may be easy to say, hey, you come up with a concept and you give them maybe 2 or 3 concepts, and then they can pick. Then it does not feel so overwhelming. Like, I don't know what. You say, well, we could do an explainer video for this budget. In my case, with case studies, it's going to be the client who wants to show their product in a real world situation. So they have a relationship with a client. So now that you have 2 companies or 2 organizations involved. So in effect, I have 2 clients. I have the client who has the product, and then I have their customer who is using that product. Now I have 2 brands that I have to protect and represent well, and 2 sets of approvals. So both companies have to agree on the approach, and they have to agree on, the ultimate product. But generally, in the world of case studies, testimonials, you're dealing with, my client is the key person or the key company with their product or service. And then my secondary client is the customer talking about their experience. So that's the situation I experience. You never know exactly, but sometimes you can just do your best to try to cover your bases and make sure that, everything's the way it should be. So it's just the nature of the business sometimes. That's our job, to make sure everyone looks great. So at some point, the client has to trust us as professionals, and then we have to take that responsibility and do our best to make a finished product. And most of the time it works fine. Sometimes people change their mind, but we do the best we can. And then if there was a mistake, we try to fix it as best we can. And that's going to be true in all across industries, all across businesses, not just video production, but any service, you have that risk. So just try to be good humans and, resolve it.
So Scott, it was super interesting dialogue. I got so much information from you. I am very thankful to you for this conversation.
I wish you well with all your various tasks and projects and client acquisition yourselves.
System shut down.